I never expected my life to shatter in the span of a single afternoon. It was a Thursday in Chicago around 3 p.m. With a light rain drizzling outside, I'm Ryan Mitchell, 43 CEO of a cross-state logistics firm known for my discipline and low profile. That day, I cut my New York business trip short by 2 days, eager to surprise Julia with a small gift from the city where we'd first dated. No calls, no warnings, just the thrill of seeing her face light up. The taxi dropped me at our 2-story villa in quiet Northbrook. I stepped out, umbrella in one hand, suitcase in the other, glancing up at the lit second-floor window. Unlocking the door, the house felt warm and familiar. But then laughter echoed from the living room, not from the TV, but intimate, breathless, and utterly wrong. My wet shoes squeaked on the wood floor as I moved down the hall. My heart tightened. There on the sofa, under the crystal chandelier, was Julia, my wife of 12 years, leaning into Damien's arms. Damien, my personal driver, the guy I'd pulled out of debt and treated like a brother. Their lips met his hand around her waist. She giggled softly. They froze when they saw me. The suitcase slipped from my grip, thudding like thunder in the silence. No scream. No curse. Just my cold, unwavering stare. "Get your coat," I said, voice low and steady. "You're fired. Get out of my house." Damien stammered an apology, scrambling past me like a storm was chasing him. The door slammed shut. I turned to Julia, her face pale. "How long?" She lifted her chin lips, trembling. "Long enough to know you don't make me feel seen anymore." I nodded. No rage. Instead, I turned, dragged her suitcase from the closet, and began folding her clothes one by one, placing them inside. Julia burst out, "Ryan, wait! I was wrong. I was lonely. I needed someone." "And what about what I needed?" I interrupted. 18-hour days building this life while you tore it down. I set the bag on the porch and looked back. "Leave. Today." She sobbed, but it wasn't remorse. It was the realization she'd lost everything. That night, I didn't sleep. I stood by the window in my bedroom, staring at the golden lights of Chicago flickering through the thin rain. The city sprawled out like an indifferent witness, unmoved by the wreckage in my life. Julia's words echoed in my head, not the betrayal itself, but the casual cruelty of them. "You don't make me feel seen anymore." Seen I'd built an empire to give her everything, working 18-hour days while she, what felt unseen enough to wrap herself around my own driver. I replayed the signs I'd ignored, piecing them together like a puzzle I should have solved months ago. The late nights, she'd come home claiming girls' night with a scent of cologne that wasn't mine. Damien's overly familiar smiles when he'd drop her off after errands. Etiquios, the deleted messages I'd glimpsed on her phone, once dismissed as paranoia. It all fit now, clear, stark, unforgiving. By 6 a.m., as dawn broke gray over the suburbs, I picked up my phone. No hesitation. I texted my lawyer, Marcus Hale, a man who'd handled my business deals for years. "Urgent. Open divorce file. Freeze joint assets. Initiate financial audit." His reply came within minutes. "On it. Meet at office tomorrow." Next, I called Emily, my executive assistant, the one person who kept my world running without questions. "Cancel all meetings. Step back from the board for 3 months. Personal matters." She paused, then said, "Understood, Ryan. I'll handle the rescheduling." No prying. That's why I trusted her. I wasn't raging. No smashed glasses or punched walls. That wasn't me. Instead, I methodically dismantled the life we'd shared, starting with the foundations. By mid-morning, I'd hired a private investigation firm. Discreet, expensive, the best in Chicago. "Full sweep," I told them over a secure line. Communications, financial trails, surveillance history focus on my wife and former driver Damian Reyes. They promised results within days: emails, texts, bank transfers, anything that left a digital footprint. Julia called 17 times that day. I let it ring, watching the screen light up with her name. Voicemails piled up. "Ryan, please, we need to talk. It was a mistake. I was lonely." Lonely. While I flew across states sealing deals to keep our villa, our cars, our life afloat, I deleted them without listening fully. That afternoon, she showed up at the house, banging on the door. I didn't answer. Instead, a paralegal from Marcus's firm arrived as planned. Through the security camera, I watched him hand her an envelope. Official notice: assets temporarily divided. You're barred from the premises without court order. Her face crumpled. She yelled my name, but the door stayed shut. I spent the evening in my study reviewing our finances. Joint accounts frozen done. Her access to company perks revoked the corporate credit card she'd used for shopping therapy. The expense accounts tied to my name, all severed with a few emails to the bank. The villa was in my name from before the marriage, the cars too. What she thought was ours was mostly mine, protected by prenups and trusts I'd set up years ago, back when I was just a rising exec wary of the world. The investigators' first report came faster than expected preliminary findings. Julia had been transferring small amounts, $500 here, $1,000 there, to an account linked to Damian. Gifts, perhaps, or hush money. Photos from building security showed them together in the garage, lingering too long. Texts extracted from backups, flirty at first, then explicit. "Can't wait for Ryan's next trip," one read. My stomach turned, but I stayed calm. This wasn't emotion, this was evidence. I discovered more Julia had been leveraging my title for her own gains. Invitations to exclusive events as Mrs. Mitchell, networking lunches charged to my firm. She'd even open a side account, funneling petty cash for personal expenses, spa days, designer bags, weekends away that now screamed affair. It all painted a picture of entitlement, of someone who'd forgotten the man behind the money. By the end of the week, I'd fortified everything. No direct confrontation, no calls, no accusations. Just quiet, systematic unraveling. The investigators dug deeper. Damian's background revealed unpaid debts I'd cleared for him years ago. Now leverage for a breach of trust lawsuit. Julia's world built on my back was crumbling, without her even knowing the full extent. I sat back in my chair, the rain still pattering outside. This wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. I'd given her everything, and she'd thrown it away. Now I'd take back what was mine piece by piece in silence. The real storm was coming, and she wouldn't see it until it hit. A week after I caught them, Julia was crashing at her best friend's place in Lincoln Park, a trendy condo I'd helped them afford years ago with a quiet loan. I knew because the investigators kept tabs, feeding me updates in sterile reports. Subject relocated to secondary address, no contact with Damian Reyes. She thought she could ride out the storm, maybe talk me into forgiveness once I cooled off. But I wasn't cooling off. I was methodically turning up the heat. Her first sign of trouble came with the credit cards. One of the reports included a screenshot from a boutique security cam, Julia at the counter trying to buy a dress, her face flushing as the clerk shook his head. "Declined, ma'am." All those platinum cards tied to my accounts frozen solid. She'd lived like royalty on them spa retreats and the Loop lunches at Alinea weekend getaways to Lake Geneva. Now nothing. I pictured her fumbling for cash, realizing her wallet held maybe $100 petty change from her allowance. She tried calling Damian next. The investigators intercepted that too. Voicemails left unanswered texts marked delivered but ignored. He'd gone radio silent, probably spooked by the lawsuit papers I'd had served. Breach of contract violation of confidentiality clauses I'd buried in his employment agreement when I'd pulled him out of that gambling debt hole 5 years back. Treated like a brother, I'd told him then. Now he was facing civil charges that could bankrupt him, plus a restraining order barring him from any contact with my properties or associates. The PI firm dug up more he'd been siphoning gas cards, even charging personal trips on the company fleet. Evidence stacked like bricks, ready for court. Julia's world shrank fast. Social media lit up not publicly, but in the whispers of our circle. I'd kept it quiet, no blasts on Facebook or leaks to the press. But word spread through the grapevine mutual friends from the country club, her yoga group, even the neighbors in Northbrook. Did you hear Ryan caught her with the driver? One report included overheard chatter at a brunch spot, her best friend distancing herself, saying, "I can't get involved, Jules. This is messy." Invites dried up. The women who'd envied her perfect life now gossiped behind her back. How stupid do you have to be to cheat on a guy like Ryan? He gave her everything. I got the calls to concerned acquaintances fishing for details. "Ryan, is everything okay? We heard..." I'd respond evenly, "Personal matter. Appreciate the concern." No fuel for the fire. Let her isolation burn on its own. She tried job hunting from what the PIs reported resumes sent to entry-level admin positions, her LinkedIn profile scrubbed of any mention of me. But who hires the ex-wife of a CEO mid-scandal rejections piled up, her confidence cracking like cheap glass. The court summons hit her like a freight train, my logistics specialty after all. Delivered by certified mail to her friend's address, hearing in 10 days, no mediation requested. Attached were preliminary filings, evidence of infidelity, financial misuse, the works. Texts between her and Damien. "Ryan's out of town again. Come over." Bank statement showing her siphoning funds for gifts. To him, a watch here, cash, withdrawals there. Even video from the home security system I'd upgraded last year, capturing their stolen moments in the garage. She'd never known about the hidden cams. I'd installed them for safety, not suspicion. She showed up at the house again late one evening. Through the new security feed on my phone, I watched her pound on the door, rain soaking her coat. "Ryan, please open up. We need to talk." The new guard I'd hired, a burly ex-cop, stepped out, handed her another envelope. "Updated restraining notice. Violation could lead to arrest." She crumpled against the porch railing, sobbing. Parts of me, the old me, felt the twinge, but it passed. This was her doing, not mine. Her family got involved next. A call from her sister in Milwaukee. "Ryan, she's falling apart. Can't you work this out?" I was polite. "She made her choices. Respectfully, this is between us. No drama, just boundaries." Julia's facade as the lucky wife shattered. Now she was the cautionary tale, the woman who'd thrown away stability for a fling with the help. By day 9, the reports painted a desperate picture. Julia alone in a cheap motel downtown after her friend needed space. No money for rent, scraping by on odd gigs, waitressing shifts she hadn't done since college. Her eyes in the surveillance photos hollow, defeated. She texted me once more. "Please, Ryan, I was wrong. Let's meet." I didn't reply. The storm I'd unleashed wasn't loud. It was relentless, eroding her world layer by layer. She thought she'd only lose a husband, but really she'd lost the life she'd taken for granted, the security, the status, the safety net. And as the hearing loomed, I prepared my final moves, knowing she'd walk in expecting mercy, only to face the cold reality of consequences. The courtroom in downtown Chicago felt sterile, like a boardroom stripped of warmth, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, wooden benches worn from years of shattered lives. I arrived early as always, with Marcus Hale at my side and my secretary trailing behind with files. No entourage, no show of force, just the essentials. I wore a simple gray suit tie, knotted precisely my face, a mask of composure. Julia entered 10 minutes later looking diminished in a plain black dress that hung loosely on her frame. Her hair was pulled back, makeup minimal, but her eyes, those eyes that once sparkled with shared secrets, darted around searching for me. When they found mine, I looked away, focusing on the judge's bench instead. The bailiff called the case Mitchell versus Mitchell. We stood as Judge Harlan entered, a stern woman in her 60s with wire-rimmed glasses and a no-nonsense air. She reviewed the docket briefly, then nodded to Marcus. "Counselor, your client wishes to proceed without mediation." "Yes, Your Honor," Marcus replied. "Petitioner seeks dissolution without spousal support or asset division beyond prenuptial terms." Julia's lawyer, a harried man named Ellis, who'd taken her case pro bono after her funds dried up, cleared his throat. "Your Honor, my client requests a hearing on equitable distribution. She's been a homemaker for 12 years, contributing to the marital home." Judge Harlan turned to me. "Mr. Mitchell, do you have any special requests?" I met her gaze steadily. "I refuse any post-divorce financial support. The respondent has violated trust ethics and honor. Evidence has been submitted." Marcus slid forward, the binder texts, bank statements, surveillance footage. The judge flipped through her expression, unchanging. "Proceed with opening statements." Ellis went first, painting Julia as the devoted wife left adrift. "Mrs. Mitchell sacrificed her career for the family. Without support, she'll face destitution. We ask for alimony and half the marital assets." Julia nodded along, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, glancing at me pleadingly. I didn't react. Marcus countered. "Your Honor, the marriage was undermined by infidelity and financial abuse. Exhibits show communications with a third party, my client's employee, detailing the affair. Transfers from joint accounts funded it. Video confirms encounters on marital property. Prenuptial agreements protect premarital assets, which comprise 90% of the estate." The judge peered over her glasses. "Mrs. Mitchell, do you contest the evidence?" Julia's voice cracked. I made mistakes. I was lonely. Ryan was always working, but I love him. We can fix this." Ellis jumped in. "She was the homemaker building the family while he built his business." I spoke then, unprompted but calm. "Family doesn't exist when it's torn apart from within. I provided everything, home, security, life. She chose to destroy it." The judge nodded. "I've reviewed the submissions. The prenup is ironclad. Infidelity clause voids claims on separate property. No children involved. Evidence of misconduct is compelling." Julia leaned forward, whispering to Ellis, who shook his head. "Respondent receives personal effects already released," Judge Harlan continued. "No alimony, no equity in business holdings, marriage dissolved unconditionally." The gavel struck, echoing like finality. Julia gasped, covering her mouth. Ellis gathered papers hastily. I stood buttoning my jacket as the courtroom cleared. In the hallway, she caught up, grabbing my sleeve. "Ryan, please, wait. I can't. I have nothing, no job, no home. You can't do this." I turned, pulling away gently but firmly. "You did this. You chose him. Chose betrayal over us." Tears streamed down her face. I was wrong. Damien meant nothing. I was stupid, lonely. Please give me a chance. We can start over. And Damien, I asked evenly. The summons for him breach a trust restraining order. He's barred from you, from me forever. She sobbed harder, knees buckling slightly. Ryan, I'm sorry, don't leave me like this. You left first, I said, in our own home. She collapsed against the wall as I walked away, Marcus at my side. No glance back. The elevator doors closed on her cries, the sound fading like a distant memory. Outside, Chicago's wind whipped through the streets, carrying the weight of what I'd just severed. It wasn't satisfaction I felt, not yet. It was release. The legal ties gone, the betrayal formalized. Julia thought the courtroom was the end, but really it was her beginning of facing a world without the safety net she'd abused. I got in my car, the engine humming to life. The drive back to Northbrook felt lighter, the villa waiting empty, but mine. For the first time in weeks, I breathed freely, knowing I'd reclaimed not just my assets, but my peace. 3 months after the courtroom gavel fell, I found myself standing on a stage in the University of Chicago addressing a room full of wide-eyed business students. The topic was Building Human Value Before Corporate Empires, a lecture I'd committed to long before my world imploded. The auditorium hummed with energy, young faces scribbling notes, professors nodding along. I spoke about resilience, about how true success stems from integrity, not just spreadsheets. Not once did I mention the divorce. No hints of betrayal, no veiled jabs at Julia. I kept it professional, focused on the lessons I'd learned climbing from a mid-level manager to CEO. The applause at the end felt genuine, a reminder that my life extended beyond the wreckage she'd left. Back in Northbrook, the villa felt different, now emptier but cleaner. I'd hired a designer to refresh the space, new paint in neutral tones, minimalist furniture, replacing the ornate pieces Julia had chosen. No traces of her lingered, not even in the closets I'd emptied. I threw myself into work with renewed focus, sealing deals I'd put on hold during the chaos. Emily handled the board seamlessly in my absence, and when I returned, the firm was stronger, profits up 15%, expansions into new markets. Evenings, I'd hit the gym or read in the study, rebuilding routines that didn't revolve around waiting for someone to come home. Socially, I eased back in. Dinners with old friends who knew the story but respected my silence. You're handling this like a champ, Ryan once said over steak at Gibson's. I just smiled. Life moves on. No bitterness aired publicly. That was my choice, dignity over drama. The grapevine carried whispers about Julia, but I tuned them out. The investigator's final report had wrapped up Damien facing trial for embezzlement, his assets seized. He'd skipped town last seen in some Midwest dive, but that chapter was closed for me. Julia, though she'd faded into the city's underbelly. The PI's updates, which I'd requested one last time for closure, painted a stark picture waitressing at a diner in Wrigleyville, pulling double shifts for tips that barely covered rent on a cramped studio in a run-down building. No more designer bags or spa days. Her wardrobe, now thrift store, finds her social circle evaporated. Friends who'd once flocked to her perfect life parties now ghosted her calls. Too messy, they'd say, or simply not pick up. Her family offered minimal help, a sister wiring small sums from Milwaukee, but nothing substantial. Pride kept her from begging more. One crisp spring morning, as I stepped out of my office building downtown, coffee in hand, I spotted her across the street. She sat on a bench clutching a folder, job applications, maybe her coat, threadbare hair unkempt. Our eyes met through the bustle of pedestrians. No spark, no rage, just recognition. She stood halfway, mouth opening, as if to speak, but I gave a single nod, polite, distant, like acknowledging a stranger from a past life. Then I turned, sliding into the waiting SUV. The door clicked shut, the engine purred, and we pulled away into traffic. In the rear view, I saw her sink back down, shoulders slumping, staring at the ground. She didn't cry from what I could tell, no dramatic scene, just quiet defeat, the kind that sinks in slow and deep. In that moment, I knew she'd finally grasped it. Her mistake wasn't just the affair, but undervaluing the man who'd given her everything. Stability, status, security, all traded for fleeting thrills with a guy who'd bolted at the first sign of trouble. She'd assumed I'd rage beg or break. Instead, I'd rebuilt stronger without her shadow. For me, there was no gloating, no late-night toasts to revenge. I'd let the law and silence do the work, dismantling her world as methodically as I'd built mine. Betrayal doesn't just wound the betrayed. It corrodes the betrayer from within. Julia learned that the hard way, self-destruction wrapped in her own choices. Me, I chose to walk away, reclaiming peace over payback. As the SUV merged onto the highway, Chicago's skyline fading behind, I felt the final weight lift. Life wasn't about winning against her. It was about moving forward without the chain she'd forged. And in that freedom, I found something unbreakable myself.